What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. We continue to look at the 2021 schedules and project what each team's record could be based off of those schedules, with NC State up next, the team that went 8-4 last year. And it's not very often that you avoid teams in your own division, but because of the craziness of 2020 and the way the schedules changed, NC State avoided Clemson last year. So they did not have to play Clemson last year, but they did play both North Carolina and Miami out of the Coastal Division. So the schedule, again, for NC State was pretty favorable, and I think that's a big reason why they finished the regular season with just 3 losses. Remember, they were in the top 25 of the college football playoff rankings at one point, and then they lost that bowl game to Kentucky. So looking ahead to 2020, this is the schedule. And before we go game by game, let's break it down and look at who they play outside of their division. In the non-conference, they're going to play South Florida. They'll play on the road at Mississippi State. They'll play Furman and Louisiana Tech. Not a murderer's row or anything, but USF is a team that is capable of being decent. Louisiana Tech's a decent Group of 5 team. Mississippi State, a tough team to figure out at this point in year 2 under Mike Leach. How good will they be playing on the road? Having to listen to those cowbells, though, that'll definitely make that a tough matchup there. And then in their cross-division matchups against the Coastal, they will once again play Miami and North Carolina. I mentioned they played both of those teams last year. They will play Miami and North Carolina out of the Coastal. That's as tough as it gets. I think those are clearly the top 2 teams in that division, and you're going to have to play on both. Miami on the road, North Carolina at home. Very tough draw there out of the Coastal. So let's go back to the schedule. And you see South Florida, that's going to be September 2nd on a Thursday night. That'll kick off the season for NC State, and a game that they should be able to take care of business in. Mississippi State, they're in week 2 on the road. Tough matchup there. That's going to be a big game, really for both teams to kind of set the tone for their season. Furman comes up after that on September 18th. Then they'll play Clemson on September 25th. Obviously a very tough matchup there. And then they will get Louisiana Tech on October the 2nd. They'll have a pretty early bye week. Their bye week is between Louisiana Tech and Boston College. And really that's a pretty good time for it because Boston College is a big swing game. That could be potentially a battle for number 2 in the Atlantic Division. And that's going to be a big game there. So Boston College on the road October 16th after getting a bye week. And then they'll play Miami on the road October 23rd. So back-to-back road games there against a very good Miami team that brings back a ton of production from last year. Almost everyone back on this Miami team. That was a good game last year. We'll see what happens this year. Louisville's up next on October the 30th. That'll be a home game for NC State. I believe they avoided Louisville last year as well, which maybe wasn't necessarily a good thing, because the Cardinals were not very good last year. We'll see how they bounce back this year. But another team that they did not play in their own division last season. Then they'll play Florida State on the road November the 6th. Wake Forest on the road November 13th. Again, back-to-back road games. Syracuse on November 20th, and then they'll close it out with North Carolina on November 26th. That'll be a Friday game, the Friday after Thanksgiving, Friday of rivalry weekend, and that's where they will end things. So they start with a Thursday night, end on a Friday night. And the schedule is really not horrible. When you look at the non-conference, again, they have a good chance to win every game in the non-conference. Yes, they get a tough draw out of the Coastal Division. That is true. But the Atlantic Division is not necessarily, or not really going to be a great division, I don't think. I mean, you got Clemson, but other than that, Boston College should be pretty good. NC State here, of course, they're going to be pretty good. Florida State has a chance to be pretty good, but I don't think you're going to get another top 10, top 15 team in that division outside of Clemson. Maybe a team proves me wrong. But because of that, again, the schedule really not too bad for NC State. Toughest back-to-backs are probably going to be right there with Boston College and Miami back-to-back on the road. That's probably the toughest back-to-back on the schedule. You can kind of go from Boston College all the way to Wake Forest. Those 5 games in a row are going to be pretty tough. But overall, again, the schedule for NC State not really that bad, and that's the case for most teams in the ACC unless they have a really tough non-conference schedule. Let's look at the projection here. So this is not a prediction. This is simply a projection based off the schedule. We kind of put teams together in different tiers and give you a rough percentage of each game. They have, if it's in the white, that means it's a 50-50 game, a game that could go either way. Red will be less than 10%, 10 to 25 in orange, 26 to 40% in yellow, 60 to 74% in purple, 75 to 90 in blue, more than 90%, that'll be in green, and that's where we'll start. Really only one guaranteed win for NC State. That'll be against Furman on September the 18th. We're talking about an FCS team, a team that NC State should be able to beat. Even if NC State was down this year, they should be able to win that game. And NC State's a team that I think should be pretty good this year. I think they can be back to really what they were last season. Like I said earlier, a chance to maybe be number 2 in that Atlantic division. So that's an easy win. And then you got a couple of games that are not guaranteed wins, but they're games that they should win. It would be a big surprise if they lost. We're talking about USF, talking about Louisiana Tech. They should win both of these games. It would be a pretty big upset if they were to lose either one of them. They'll be double-digit favorites in both of those games. So 3 pretty easy wins on the schedule, and that's always nice. If you got 3 wins you can count on, then you only need 3 more wins to get to a bowl game. And I think this team can do much better than 6-6, but I'm just saying it's almost a guarantee that this team will get to a bowl game. Other games that they'll be favored in, I think there's one more clear favorite, or clear game where they'll be favored. That's Syracuse at home. Syracuse really is struggling right now, and the game's at home for NC State. I think that, it's not going to be a game where NC State's favored by 20, but it'll be about a touchdown, 7, 8, 9 points, somewhere in there, where I think NC State will be favored. Now let's go to the opposite side of this, the games where I think they're going to be an underdog. You got one clear one. That's Clemson. I think that's in that 10 to 25% range. It would be a very big surprise if NC State were able to pull off this win. I just don't really see it happening. So that's a loss. I think you can pretty much go ahead and put that one in the loss column. But that's the only game that really they don't have much of a chance in. They'll have a chance in every other game, but there are a couple of games where I think they're going to be underdogs by about a touchdown. I think that's Miami and North Carolina, the 2 games in the Coastal Division. If they had an easier schedule against the Coastal, this is a team that could really maybe do something special this year, maybe 10 or 11 wins. But because of these 2 teams out of the Coastal, I think 10 or 11 wins is going to be really tough, and I think they will be clear underdogs in both of those games. But you've got a bunch of 50-50 games here left on the schedule. You got Mississippi State, Boston College, Louisville, Florida State, and Wake Forest. Some of these are tough to predict. Really don't know what we're going to get from Mississippi State this year. Boston College should be pretty good. That's going to be a tough matchup. That one is almost in the yellow for me. I think Boston College will be favored in that game, but just not quite enough to put it in the yellow. Louisville's a game where NC State should be favored. I don't know. Maybe that one could go in the purple. I think Louisville could bounce back this year. I think they could be better. It's a team with talent, but again, they just were not very good last year, and so it's tough to really figure out. Some of these games are tough to figure out where you want to put them. But if we put Boston College in the yellow and put Louisville in the purple, the average at the end will come out the same. So we're just going to put them both in the 50-50 range. Florida State, I know NC State beat them fairly easily last year, but Florida State's going to be a different team. They will be a different team this year. A lot of transfers coming in, a lot of production coming back. Florida State has a chance to be pretty good, and that's why I've got this one in as a 50-50 game. Wake Forest on the road. Another game that should be pretty tough. You look at last year, NC State won a really close game. Now it's on the road. So that's why we put that as a 50-50 game. So when we look at the entire schedule and give you a projection, again, this is not a prediction, just a projection based off of these percentages. What we do is we count the blue and the green as wins. We count the orange and the red as losses. And then we average out the rest. For the yellow, we use 40%. For the white, we use 50%. For the purple, we use 60%. It's not a perfect system. It's just a formula that I use to give you kind of a rough estimate to what the record will be. And if you do better than this, you have a good year. If you do worse than this projection, it's going to be a bad year. 7-5 is the projection for NC State. So the odds would tell you that they're going to lose to Clemson, and they'll lose to Miami and North Carolina. Or maybe they win one of those games, and then you really just split these 50-50 games up. And I think it's a very fair projection, 7-5. I could see this team doing a little bit better. 6-6 probably the worst case scenario for them. So they're a 7-5, 8-4 team for me. I think they could beat Louisville. I think they could beat Wake Forest. Mississippi State's definitely going to be an interesting matchup there. And maybe they pull off an upset again. Maybe they beat Miami or North Carolina, or maybe they upset Boston College in a game where I think it's a 50-50 game, but I do think Boston College will be favored. So 7-5 the projection for NC State. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think they'll be better or worse? And give me your thoughts down in the comments below.